So, good morning to all of you. On behalf of the organizing committee, I welcome all the participants for this plenary session, 6th in series, and perhaps the last for this conference. Also, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome our chair for the session, Dr. PKS Chauhan. So let me introduce to the participants our chair of the session, Dr. PKS Chauhan, who works as a senior principal scientist and professor in Geotechnical Engineering Group at CSIR, which is Central Building Research Institute, Roorkee. He has completed his PhD in seismology from University of Roorkee in 1995. His research areas are strong motion seismology, engineering geophysics, geoarchaeology, and landslide investigation. He has published about 75 research papers in national and international conferences and journals, and is having research experience of more than 25 years. Welcome you, sir, for kindly consenting to be the chair of this session. Welcome you, sir. May I now introduce our co-chair, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Verma from IGS Jabalpur chapter. He holds a PhD in civil engineering from Rajiv Gandhi Technical University, Bhopal. Did his BA honors from Dr. H.S. Gaur University, Sagar. ME structures from JEC Jabalpur. Presently, he is the HOD at Takshila Institute of Technology, Engineering and Technology, Jabalpur. His areas of interest are structural design of reinforced concrete structures and geotechnical engineering. He is also an MBA in project management and masters of journalism and mass communication. He is a fellow engineer, India, council member of the Institution of Engineers, Jabalpur local chapter, honorary secretary of IGS Jabalpur chapter, secretary of Practicing Engineers Association, Jabalpur, executive member, Indian Concrete Institute, Jabalpur Center, and council member of Institution of Values, Jabalpur, and life member of ISET. He is the recipient of ICR Ultratech Award for Outstanding Building Award 2019, Best Paper Award in the Indian Geotechnical Conference 2019. He has nearly 30 years of experience in infrastructural development as a structural consultant and 10 years of teaching experience. He associated with many mitigations works on the 22nd May 1927 earthquake in Jabalpur. He has presented, published more than 130 technical papers in national and international conferences, seminars, and workshops, delivered more than 15 lectures through webinars and different forums. He has wrote a book, Jabalpur Ke Sarovar, Amol Dharohar. I welcome you, sir, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, being the co-chair.
Thank you, Dr. Parsardi. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Before I hand over the session to you, I have a small announcement. So after this keynote lecture by Dr. Gupta, so we will have the corporate presentations, and once the corporate presentations are completed, we will conclude the session. Okay, so over to you, sir, for chairing the session, Dr. Pradeep.
Thank you, Dr. Parsardi. It is really a privilege and honor to be chairing in this conference. I would like to thank organizing committee for giving me the opportunity. And really, in this session, we are having an eminent speaker, Dr. Ishwar Dutt Gupta. Dr. Gupta was a former director, CWPRS. He is an internationally recognized expert in the area of earthquake engineering and engineering seismology, with over 40 years of professional and research experience. Dr. Gupta obtained MSc in physics from University of Delhi in 1977. He did MS in earthquake engineering from University of South California in 1985. He did PhD from University of Pune in 1987 on risk-based seismic response analysis of structures, a stochastic approach. His major area of expertise include strong motion seismology, probabilistic seismic hazard analysis, dynamic response analysis of gravity dams, seismic surveillance of river valley projects, and reservoir-triggered seismicity. He has published over 140 research papers, guided 9 PhDs, and prepared more than 150 project-specific study reports in the area of expertise. He is a member of National Committee on Seismic Design Parameters and Earthquake Engineering Sectional Committee CED 39 of BIS. He is also the member of expert group set up by AERB, Mumbai. So with this brief introduction, may I request Dr. Ishwar Dutt Gupta to present his keynote address, Sir, you will be given 40 minutes and followed by the question hour for 5 minutes. I think Dr. Gupta, with so much experience, will meet the time limit, because that is very crucial for any conference.
Okay,
Thank you,
sir.
very much. And Dr. Gupta, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chauhan, Dr. Verma, Dr. Parthasarthi, and Ravi Jakka. And very good morning to all. I am going to talk on the prediction of Fourier amplitude and phase spectra for simulation of design accelerometers in the Western Himalaya as an example. Before I go through my slides, I will like to make a couple of brief comments on the design ground motion. The first is that we have to clearly distinguish and understand the difference between the actual earthquake ground motion and the design ground motion. Sometimes comparison between these two creates a lot of hassles and problems to the designer as well as the seismologists who work out the design ground motion. One should understand that a design ground motion with the lower PGA, because PGA is taken as a parameter determinantal to the ground motion, which is not a correct approach, but it has become a very wide practice among non-seismologists and the general people. So one has to be clear that the design ground motion with lower PGA may be more conservative and safe than an actual ground motion with higher PGA, because the actual ground motions are may be characterized by stray peaks. Another issue is that the design ground motion estimation and the design has to be compatible to each other. The design practices and the design ground motion cannot be worked out in separation of each other, which has also not been very properly observed in many of the past instances. And the third thing is lack of confidence among the seismologists or earthquake engineers working out the design ground motion, that they keep on changing the design ground motion based on the application, that to which structure it is being applied. And that also create problems in future, because the ground motion estimation is a process of seismic hazard estimation, and hazard cannot change. So we have to be very clear that whatsoever conservatism or the differences has to be operated to ensure more safety and to reduce the risk has to be incorporated in the design process. And we should not give different design ground motion. We have to adopt a uniform policy, and all over the country, we should standardize the processes of estimating the design ground motion. Now, I will go through my. So I have organized my presentation in 5 sections, and to start with, I will give a brief background to the proper topic on which I will be talking, so that what I want to convey is appreciated, because many of you may be already aware about the background, but may not be all. So I will be quickly going through the background. And for start with, we have to see how the ground motion during an earthquake is generated. It is a very complex process involving the earthquake source, the path between the source and the site characteristics. And there is no way that it can be modeled mathematically to the required accuracy and with the required confidence, but though many people are doing. So there is no alternative to recording the ground motion and developing the design ground motion by empirical approach, because the mathematical simulations are as good as the inputs are given to them. And those inputs can be generated only from the recorded ground motions, because we cannot get the inputs theoretically. So we have to mainly depend on the empirical approach based on the recorded ground motions. Now, recording of earthquakes had started long back. When it comes to developing the recording instrument, the example is given of a Chinese philosopher, Chang Heng, who developed a sort of seismoscope in 132 AD, then the real acceleropgraph was developed in 1875. That is not very old compared to the other developments in other fields of science. And the modern seismographs were developed much later, only by, say, the last decade of the 19th century. And subsequently, a lot of developments have taken place, but we can say the recording of earthquakes had begun practically in 1900, say 1 or 2, when the BAAS, that is a British Association of Advances in Science, under the aegis of BAAS, they installed worldwide seismographs. And that time, the main interest of seismology was to derive the structure of the earth. So they were recording the long distant earthquakes, and there was no interest in the ground motion. The instruments required, this shows that what is the difference between the ordinary seismographs and the ground motion recording instruments, which we call now as strong motion accelerographs, because the ground motion for engineering applications has to be characterized in form of the ground acceleration time histories, which can be applied directly to the structures to apply the earthquake forces and to estimate the resulting response in terms of displacement and stresses, which are used to design. So the development of the ground motion recording instruments happened almost 50 years after the seismographs were developed. And before that, for engineering application only, the observational was the media to characterize the effect of an earthquake through macroseismic intensity. Several intensity scales were developed, and even today, that is the practice being followed. But and that cannot provide us a quantitative measure of the ground motion to apply the modern mathematical models and finite element techniques to design the structures. So the development for the ground motion recording was taken place in Japan by the Strong Motion Accelerograph Committee set up. They developed and designed the first strong motion recording instrument in 1931. Almost simultaneously, a slightly improved version of this instrument was developed in US by US Coast and Geodetic Survey, and they installed many of those instruments in early 30s in California, and the first record of strong ground motion was obtained due to an earthquake in the Southern California region due to Long Beach earthquake in March 1933. And that we can say the beginning of the earthquake engineering. So earthquake engineering is a very, very young science or practice, which has to still answer many of our questions, and developments are required to be made to have, safe designs, and our objective of having a earthquake resilient society. So how well we can characterize the hazard only determines the safety due to earthquakes, because there is a lot of uncertainty specifying the ground motion. Whereas once you specify the motion, the structural analysis doesn't involve so much of uncertainties. That becomes almost a deterministic process. So these instruments also had developed quickly after 1931, and by 1964 they were available commercially. And very interestingly, the first two of these instruments, when they were available commercially, were installed in the Koyna Dam in 1965, much before 67 earthquake. So there was some vision to record these earthquakes in Koyna Dam. But later on, the developments and installation of such instruments in India has not progressed that well as elsewhere in the world. Another development about recording of strong motion in India took place that a indigenous instrument was developed at the then University of Roorkee. So one of the instruments from USGS was provided to University of Roorkee to use as a prototype for developing their own instrument, and they developed it in 1971, and hundreds of those were installed at different places in India. But unfortunately, I am not aware that they were of good standard to provide any record, because I am not aware that any records are available from those instruments. Now, it took a long time after Koyna to have such instruments in the highly seismic Himalayan region. It was only in 1983, 85, and then 99 that three regions, two in the Western Himalaya and one in the Northeast India, were instrumented with these instruments, and those operated till 1999. And then there was a gap again. And after a gap of 5 years, the next phase of such instruments was installed in India, again covering the entire Himalayas, and in this second phase, the adjacent area of Indo-Gangetic Plain, which can experience the Himalayan earthquake hazard significantly, was also instrumented. So this shows that, so about 270 digital state-of-the-art instruments were installed during this second phase, and 20 more instruments were installed in the National Capital Territory. And these instruments operated, because electronic equipment has a life, they cannot run indefinitely. So they functioned well up to around 2014, and they provided a good database on strong motion recordings, which is required for specifying and analyzing the ground motion characteristics. So as of today, these instruments provided us 146 records from 12 earthquakes from the first phase analog type of instruments during 1986 to 99. Then there was a gap of about 6 years. And this second phase instrument provided almost 471 records from 130 earthquakes during period of 2005 to 2014. Unfortunately, most of these instruments were not maintained and working when the Nepal earthquake of 2015 took place, and we lost valuable data from that large earthquake. Currently, the situation is not very good. After the second phase was stopped, there was no program of strong motion recording at national level, and the only national level efforts being in operation is that every observatory of the IMD, or now it is called as Indian Institute Seismological Center, ISC, New Delhi. So they have only 150 seismological observatories over the entire country, which each one is equipped with one strong motion instrument. So if you see, there are large gaps for strong motion studies. We are nowhere compared to the international scenario. And even if we see for normal earthquake recording, this network is very sparse. So if we see the international scenario in every seismic area in different countries, the strong motion instruments has continuously and steadily grown, whereas in India, we are now back to zero almost after having a good second phase of recording. So this slide shows that in Japan, there are two networks, one with 1,000 surface stations distributed uniformly at every 20 kilometers. And the other one is having the surface and borehole pairs of instruments. And these are operating since 1996, and more than 100,000 records they have obtained and provided to the world for understanding the ground motion. In US also, they have a big program of more than 2,000 stations being coordinated by USGS, and they have a big data. Then coming to other places like in Taiwan, they have 469. Now Taiwan is much smaller area. Similarly, in Italy, they have 528. In Iran also, there are 1160 such instruments. And in China, they have more than 1,000, whereas now our current program has only 150 such instruments. So every time when it comes to estimation of ground motion, we say that we don't have the record data to have this region-specific ground motion. But at the same time, where from the data will come unless we have the recording programs in a coordinated level at the national level. So one of the purpose of this lecture is also to highlight the importance of such data. And once we have this data, there are other developments required to arrive at the ground motion. As I told, that the directly recorded data are not suitable to be used straight away in design applications. Now, recorded data for the strong motion acceleration are provided in three components, because the ground motion is completely described. For application to a structure and to analyze its response, we should record two horizontal components and a vertical component. So this can be utilized to know the comprehensive response of this structure in terms of the time history. But for engineering applications, simplified methods of design are used more widely by the practitioners, where the response spectrum of this time history is used as ground motion. Now, this shows the response spectrum of the recorded ground motion. It is characterized by many peaks and valleys, which are very high and very low compared to the average trend. So if the natural frequency of a structure happen to coincide with the peak in the response spectrum, it will unrealistically overestimate the response. And if it happens to coincide with a valley, it will underestimate. So the design spectra cannot be the real spectra with so much of fluctuations. They have to be smoothly varying design spectra. Now, how to make a smooth spectrum? And that was also devised by the engineers, that we have to take the average of several such spectra to get the smooth spectrum, because the smoothing of a single spectrum cannot be used for design, because that will represent a fixed combination of the earthquake scenario, where as for design, we have to have a generalized sort of spectrum which can represent all future scenario. Now, for smoothing, we have to normalize such spectra, because you cannot smooth the spectra having different magnitudes and distance. So a normalization process was devised so that they can all be considered to have been corrected for the difference in the magnitude and distance of each record, and then take the average. So this sort of normalized spectra were first developed and proposed by Hausner in 1954. That time only he used 4 strong motion records, very, very less number of records. And later, and he, due to 4 records, could not, model the effect of the site characteristics, because ground motion is known to be influenced significantly by the site soil condition. So that spectrum was used for quite some time till more advanced such normalized smooth spectra were made available by other researchers. And most important among those are the spectra by Moharaj and Seed et al., who gave such spectra for different types of site soil conditions. And they were termed as the site-dependent standard spectra, whereas the Hausner spectra were the site-independent because they were not considering the effect of the site soil condition. But unfortunately, in India, the Hausner spectra was included in the first edition of our IS code for earthquake resistant design, the 1893, and they were remaining in the code till 2002. There was no effort to change. In the world, a lot of development took place. So that is the sort of difficulty with which we are not faced properly in a scientific manner. And today also, when we try to revise our code, at that moment we are so critical, but later on periodical revisions are not taking place and things remain for a long time. The revision which was made in 2002 still continuing, and a lot of further developments have taken place. So just to quickly have a look at what were the Hausner spectra which were used in our IS code. So they are the spectra for 5 different damping values, and they don't depend or don't consider the effect of site characteristics. Moharaj developed spectral shapes. So these are standard spectral shapes. They are scaled by the peak ground acceleration for actual use at a project site, and that peak ground acceleration has to be estimated separately using the hazard assessment techniques. Seed gave spectra for qualitative descriptions of the site. So these were the spectra which were never used in our code and other practices. But these spectra are also, even if they are site dependent, they are not site specific, because we have obtained these spectra using the records from earthquakes with magnitudes and distances over wide ranges. So another development was evolved, in which it was advocated that we should develop site-specific normalized spectral shapes rather than using site-dependent. So in site-specific, what is the difference? That we should get the average spectra by using the records from earthquakes with magnitude and distance within small intervals around the value of magnitude and distance we are interested in. So this gives definitely much better and more site-specific spectra, but there are many difficulties in implementing this approach, and we in India had also faced, because the nuclear regulatory board and nuclear power corporation, they wanted to implement this approach for the design of nuclear power plants in 70s till almost 2010. But we were not able to get a sufficient number of recorded data in the desired magnitude and distance ranges. And also, though we use the small range, but there are still intervals of magnitude and distance, and the earthquake ground motion, particularly for magnitude, is very sensitive. Even 0.2 or 0.3 units of magnitude cause the ground motion variations which are of the order of 2 to 3 times. So they also suffer from the drawbacks of the standard site-dependent spectral shape. So I, in 2002, presented a paper highlighting the drawbacks of all these standard spectral shape, whether site-dependent or site-specific, and I showed that it is not appropriate to use these spectra. This shows one typical site-specific spectral shape developed for magnitude 6.5 at 25 kilometer, though they differ from the standard spectral shape significantly, but still they are not appropriate to get the site-specific design ground motion. So at present, the widely accepted practice is to get the design spectra by carrying out the probabilistic or deterministic seismic hazard analysis using the empirical ground motion prediction equations for the response spectrum amplitudes. And for having site-specific hazard analysis, these ground motion prediction equations are desired to be based on the data recorded in the region of application. And here we always show our inability to get such spectra in India by saying that we don't have sufficient strong motion data to have such equations specific to different parts of the country. Now, though we don't have sufficient data, but we have a critical mass of data at present, which I indicated that the 2 phases of studies. And in addition to those, some amount of such data are also available with individual organizations like, NGRI and as that institute at Gandhinagar, that is Institute of Seismological Research, then Badia Institute, IIT Roorkee, and maybe some other institutes. But those data are not made as a part of a common database at one place so that those can be utilized for the useful purpose of characterizing the attenuation relation for India. So that is also a job required to be done. In addition, we have to embark upon a national program with at least 1,000 strong motion stations to record the future earthquakes. Till then, there are techniques to work with limited data. We should start with the ground motion prediction equations developed for the data-rich regions elsewhere in the world, and we can tune those using our limited data to suit the region in India, and then we can carry out the hazard analysis, which can be considered acceptable till we have our own equations. Now, the spectra which we generate, design spectra so-called, for the site using the PSHA or DSHA approach, can be used only for simplified response analysis using response spectral superposition approaches. But for nonlinear analysis and for more detailed response analysis, we have to carry out the seismic time history response analysis, which requires ground acceleration design time histories. And the current practice is to generate those time histories compatible to the design spectrum. So there are, I think, at least 100 different methods proposed to generate the time histories compatible to the design spectrum. So if we have a smooth and idealized design spectrum, we can start with some recorded time history or synthetic time history. And there are ways to modify it so that the spectrum of modified time history can match the target time history closely. Here it shows the matching of the time history for this spectrum by 2 different methods. Now this top one is the original recorded time history, and the middle and the bottom time histories are the modified time histories to match this spectrum. And if we see these modified time histories, they are very clearly having different characteristics. This time history and this time history will not produce the same dynamic response of a structure, though both are matching the spectrum almost with the same closeness. So this approach, though it is a sort of mathematical matching, it lacks a physical basis to generate the time history, because response spectrum is not the ground motion parameter. It is the response of a maximum response of a single degree freedom system. So generating time history from response spectrum is purely a mathematical matching, and the time history cannot be considered to have physically realistic characteristics. So I propose to go for an alternative approach using the Fourier spectrum rather than the response spectrum, because Fourier spectrum is an equivalent representation of the ground motion in the frequency domain. If we take the complex Fourier transformation of the time history, we can get back exactly the original time history by inverse Fourier transform. So Fourier spectrum approach is a physically and mathematically accurate process, and that if we use, we can get more realistic ground motion for the design applications. But it requires both the amplitude as well as the phases. Now the amplitude of the Fourier spectrum can be predicted empirically, and people at present are using other methods. So it can be predicted quite easily, but phase is such a random, and they are wrapped. Wrapped means the phase are predicted between -pi to pi or 0 to 2 pi. And if we see those wrapped phase, the prediction of those is not so easy. So I illustrate that how this can be done. Now, prediction of this amplitude spectrum, Fourier amplitude spectrum, is almost identical to prediction of the response spectrum, because we can develop the prediction equations in an identical manner at different frequencies to predict the Fourier amplitudes. But the more difficulty is in predicting accurately the Fourier phase angles, because we cannot develop directly the prediction equations for the phase spectra. So we have to use a Y media to develop the or predict the phase. Now I have at present the Fourier approach is being used only through the source model approach, in which the Fourier spectrum is predicted using a theoretical basis. And as I told in the beginning, that predicting accurate ground motion theoretically is not possible, because the inputs cannot be defined so realistically or accurately without having the recorded strong motion data. So this approach is being used widely, and many proponents of this approach claim that due to lack of the strong motion data, this provides a alternative to cope up the lack of data, but that is not correct. And this approach has many other drawbacks, in fact, that can be discussed in detail. But main difficulty in this approach is that many parameters we fix a priori without any basis. So they are fixed subjectively. And among the other parameters, we pick up from different published literature, and they lack compatibility. So these two big drawbacks in almost all such studies done in the past makes the outcome of this sort of approach very doubtful and unreliable. So we have to develop the empirical equations, which I have illustrated for the Western Himalayan region. I have used 217 strong motion records from the available strong motion data, which I described in the beginning of my lecture. And the details of the distance and magnitude is given here. So these data have been used to develop the equation for the Fourier amplitude spectrum. As I told, it is easy to develop such equation similar to the response spectrum. And I have described in my paper the details, because this developing a prediction equation itself is not a simply curve fitting process using some sort of software. It requires a lot of decision making and expertise to develop such equations for practical purposes. And I am not going to discuss the details on all those aspects which can be seen from my paper, but I will show that using this database, we can develop very practical equations which predict the Fourier spectra more realistically compared to the source model approach. By no source model approach, we can get such spectra which we get based on the ground motion prediction equation developed using the region-specific data. So this shows the prediction that magnitude dependence should basically account for the magnitude saturation, that as the magnitude increase, the increase in the Fourier amplitude should not be uniform. It should have decreasing increase because the earthquake ground motion saturates as the magnitude increases, because a large magnitude earthquake is equivalent to many smaller earthquakes placed side by side, and it is not a point source. So this, and most of the source model approach are based on point source approach. So this shows very physically realistic way the magnitude saturation effect. Also, as we go closer to the fault, only a limited part of the fault is effective at the site. So the ground motion doesn't increase with the same rate. So this is also modeled very realistically in these equations. Also, the ground motion is governed by two site parameters. One is the shallow site soil conditions, and the other is the deep soil conditions. So both those parameters have been considered here, and their effect is very nicely predicted in this. And if we compare these predictions with the recorded data, they fall within the dispersion range, and very accurately it is. Now, once we have the spectra, the other part is the phase spectra. The via media for predicting the phase spectra is that we first predict the group delay times. Group delay time is the time differentiation of the phase spectrum. And from the group delay time, we generate the group velocity, because distance divided by time, if we know the hypocentral distance or distance from source to the site, from the group delay time, we get the group velocity. And from group velocity, we go to the phase velocity. And from phase velocity, we can generate the phase spectra. So this is the approach. And now I will quickly show that this Fourier spectrum can be idealized by small rectangles with the value at the center of the rectangle, because we have to discretize the spectrum. And over this narrow range, we model the phase to be linearly varying with a central value of phi n, and Tn is the slope of this linear varying. So this derivative of this gives this Tn, which is the delay time, group delay time. So if we take the inverse Fourier transform of this small rectangle representing the Fourier amplitude at a frequency omega n, it gives a group of waves, and the peak time of this peak is the group delay time. That group delay time is given by the derivative of the phase. So I have used a process of getting these derivatives without actually unwrapping the phase, because unwrapping of phase is a very mathematically inaccurate process. So there is a more elegant process where without physically unwrapping, we can get the delay time. From that, we get the group velocity. And this shows two examples. This is the original records, this group delay time.
Request Dr. Gupta, please try to sum up within 3 minutes.
Okay, sir. So this then was used to compute the phase velocity, and from phase velocity we get the phase spectrum, and from that we can generate the time history, because if we have the amplitude as well as phase, then we can define the complete complex Fourier transform, and the inverse Fourier transform of that gives us the time history. And that time history, like the recorded accelegrams, we have to apply correction for baseline. Otherwise, velocity and displacement records will not be physically realistic. So this is without baseline correction, we can get this velocity and displacement realistic values. And this shows the examples of the time history generated. This is the unwrapped phase generated by this empirical approach. This is the design accelerogram obtained, and this is showing the compatibility between the Fourier amplitude spectrum and the amplitude spectrum from this time history. And from time history, we can get the design spectra. So that is the basic approach I propose to be developed using recorded strong motion data as an alternative to the response spectra. So here we can, if we have the ground motion equations for Fourier spectra, we can predict the Fourier amplitude spectra using PSHA or DSHA approach. And we can predict also the phase spectra and generate the time histories. And those time histories can be used to generate the design spectra. And those spectra will have all the characteristics which I showed within the Fourier amplitude spectrum, that dependence on magnitude, distance, and site condition, that will be propagated within those design spectra also. Just as most of the conclusions are summary of what I have spoke. The last one shows that I have presented an example with limited data, but that itself shows very promising results. And more comprehensive analysis, of course, are required by having more such data. And till we have such data, if this example and illustration is able to motivate for collecting such data and having more comprehensive observational programs in India to record such data, I think the purpose of my making this presentation is served. Thank you very much. And now we can take up the questions, if any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. Now may I request my co-chair, Dr. Sanjay Verma, to sum up the highlights of Dr. Gupta's lecture and invite for the question answers to the participants.
Thank you, respected Chauhan sir. So thank you very much, Dr. Gupta sir, for your this very fruitful presentation. The topic was empirical prediction of a Fourier amplitude and a phase spectra, including local site effect for simulation of design accelerogram in Western Himalaya region. So this was very, very useful for the, I think, new generation, this very useful presentation. So you have very nicely covered, you have started with the history of recording measurements from 132 AD to till date. You have very nicely explained the site-specific normalized spectra shapes also. And you have briefly described the widely accepted current approaches with the examples, spectrally method accelerogram. You have very nicely described your topic with the spectral approaches for your Fourier spectrum based alternative approaches. And lastly, you have very nicely described your Fourier amplitude spectra models and prediction for the Fourier spectra simulation of your Fourier phase spectra. So overall, this is very, very good your presentation for your overall ground motion prediction, sir. So on behalf of the organizing committee, Sanjay Verma thanks you for this very fruitful presentation, sir. So Dr. Chauhan, we can move for the some questions if we have. So Dr. Ravi, where can I see the questions in the Q&A section?
I think in the question and answer box, there is no question, but still the persons who are present, if they want to ask some questions, please.
I want to ask some questions, sir.
Yes,
sure.
Yes, Dr. Mandal.
I am Dr. H.S. Mandal, sir. Gupta sir. Sir, regarding National Center for Seismology, you told something that 150 seismic network stations. That is, sir, actually it is a planned permanent seismic stations. Okay, that is the broadband seismic station, and our purpose is to give the earthquake magnitude and location near real time. Okay, but this is not the SMA type. But we are near future are planning to keep a SMA station so that we can get the ground motion parameters also that places. So this is just you correct it, and presently we have 115 monitoring station under National Seismic Network, and likely we have to increase it, maybe 150 more than that. But you have mentioned it 150, so you correct it this one because it is a international level. You are giving some lecture. So at present we have 115 stations. If you count in your map, also you find that. So next question,
Yeah.
sir, I want to see, sir, that whatever the normalized response factor you have not shown that normalized. You have written it is a spectral acceleration. It should be normalized spectral acceleration. Whatever you are in your presentation, I have seen.
Yeah, you are right.
So
It
it
is
should
not
be
right.
normalized. Okay. Another thing, due to source characterization, you have to be mentioned that corner frequency. So corner frequency means F by FC. So FC means if you go for smaller magnitude, it corner frequency more, and if you go higher magnitude, it corner frequency less. So how to address this? You have not mentioned here because you have taken series of earthquakes. That is from 3.5, then 4 and 5, and then you have just simulated to up reaching to 7.5. Okay, so you have to mention how the corner frequency is vital role for these places, because corner frequency, as you go magnitude higher, so it will be lesser corner frequency. Okay, but your that displacement amplitude will be maximum. So you have to address this also properly before to simulate any strong motion from one place, one source area to another site place.
Yeah. May I reply?
Sure, sir.
Yeah. He has pointed out an issue which really is involved in source model prediction of Fourier spectra. What I clearly told that these are the empirical ground motion prediction equations similar to the equations for the response spectra. At present, we are developing those sorts of equations only for the response spectra. What I am trying to impress upon is that in an identical way, it is a Fourier amplitude spectrum. We can develop the prediction equations for it. So it doesn't involve the source parameters like your FC or stress drop or any other parameters, which are involved only when you use the source model from theoretical consideration. So this FC is not explicitly involved in developing the ground motion empirical equations. But if you see and if you plot those in the form of displacement spectra, that effect in these empirical spectra come very nicely automatically. As you increase the magnitude, your corner frequency shifts to lower values. That is automatically built up because you are matching the spectra to the recordings. And recordings are containing that effect, so they are automatically built in the empirical prediction equations.
But you have mentioned in mathematically expression that that in observation after observation at the site is equal to source effect, site effect, and the path effect you are using. Okay, so path effect directly implemented as the quality factor, or out of the depth dependent quality factors are there. So that are the major inhomogeneity condition, because if you go for a western Himalayan area, so lot of inhomogeneity conditions of the faults or dikes or orientations and all these things are there. So depth dependent quality factor inclusion, because once an earthquake coming from Hindu Kush area, suppose for example, so that will be penetrated through the deeper, like maybe 100 kilometers, 120 kilometers. So that coming deeper medium and coming different layers other than the strata. So that strata's Q value are different. So if you take a single Q value at the surface level or whatever there, so it may not be justify your the simulation purposes. So for that area, it is a very complex tectonic formations are there. So before to find exact or near to exact, you have to be think about this, because quality factor is a path effect and site effect is also there, and once you model it from 3 to 4 to 5 and 6 and 6 above 6, there is a frequency content. So that frequency content may be different.
Yes,
So-
you are right.
So,
And all that has been taken care in a more elegant way, because you may be already very well aware, a person of your eminence and experience, that these attenuations, when we see really, they are mathematical tools to separate out in the geometrical attenuation and the anelastic attenuation. But there is a, sort of trade-off between the two. If you change the geometrical attenuation, your Q value change, because 1 over R in most of the source model approach, 1 over R and 1 over R under root, that is sort of is, a priori fixed. That gives your a sort of some Q values, which cannot be considered as an absolute Q value. Because if you change it 1 over R to some other 1 over R raised to the power 1.2, because nobody knows exactly that 1 over R is in a homogeneous earth. Real earth doesn't have 1 over R as geometrical attenuation. So here I have used a frequency dependent geometrical attenuation which combines both the geometrical attenuation and the anelastic attenuation in a single parameter. So if you please go through my paper in detail. In fact, even paper there was a limitation of pages, so I could not elaborate those issues so much, but you will get a feel of it. So that is a different approach than using the geometrical attenuation separately and anelastic attenuation separately. I have integrated both into a frequency dependent geometrical attenuation. So they are taken care to the maximum extent possible with the available data. When you have more data, perhaps these may further refine. But these are the very well-known issues, which I think every expert doing such studies try to take care. But how well he has been able to do, that may be varying from case to case. And I hope in this case, I have illustrated that how they should be done when more data becomes, rather than thinking it as a ultimate, development. This is more to show that such exercises can be done for practical use if we have more of strong motion data.
but sir, it has been observed that actual ground motion, whenever an earthquake and actual record, are different between theoretical and practical, whatever we are observing. So that is the biggest challenge or issues with us till now. So that
Yes.
needs to be addressed properly. Near future maybe improved.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
that's why we need more data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Mandal,
Gupta.
for your this query and discussion.